Welcome to BioBits and Bytes, the deep dive where we cut through the noise and get straight to the fascinating core of complex topics. Today, we're plunging headfirst into a realm that, for centuries, really only existed in science fiction, but is now rapidly becoming reality. We're talking about the audacious ambition of ending human disease as we know it. Just imagine for a moment the human body, not just as, a complex organism, but think of it like an incredibly intricate, self-repairing machine. What if, after millennia of trial and error, we finally had the ultimate diagnostic toolkit, like a universal scanner that could pinpoint every single glitch, no matter how tiny or complex, and along with that, a master mechanic who could fix every one of them perfectly, every single time. Now, this isn't just about curing one specific ailment or finding a new treatment for one disease. No, this is about a monumental shift. We're looking towards a future where illness is no longer just a given, where being sick isn't an inevitable part of being human. So our journey today, it's going to take us through some really groundbreaking AI breakthroughs that are revolutionizing drug discovery. We'll also explore the deeply personal and often overlooked fight against those long-standing neglected diseases that still plague millions around the world. And we'll even dare to dive into a profound what-if scenario. What if illness truly ceased to exist entirely? What would that even look like? To help us navigate this incredible vision, we've pulled from a whole stack of diverse sources, really cutting-edge stuff. We're talking everything from Google DeepMind's pretty bold predictions about the future of medicine, to recent scientific surveys detailing what experts actually expect for genetic therapies in the near future. We've also got critical analyses of global disease eradication efforts, looking at places like Nigeria as a case study, and even some philosophical explorations of what a disease-free future might actually mean for society and, well, for human evolution itself. So our mission today is pretty clear. Unpack the promises, examine the undeniable progress, and really grapple with the profound implications of this relentless push towards a world where disease is no longer a given. It's an exciting, definitely complex, and deeply human story. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Okay, so let's dive into what many are calling a foundational breakthrough in modern biology, understanding proteins. For those of us who aren't molecular biologists day to day, it's maybe easy to overlook just how fundamental these things are. Proteins are, quite literally, the workhorses of our cells. They build our tissues, carry oxygen, they catalyze reactions, fight infections. They do pretty much everything that keeps us alive and healthy. But here's the really critical part. Their function depends entirely on their incredibly complex, precise 3D shape. Think of it like a super specialized key fitting into a very specific lock. If that key shape is even slightly off, it just doesn't work. And for decades, figuring out these exact 3D shapes of proteins was, well, it was like trying to assemble a million-piece puzzle without the picture on the box. Or maybe, a better analogy, trying to fold an origami crane. But you're only told the final dimensions, not any of the steps. The traditional methods, things like X-ray crystallography and nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, they were unbelievably complex, expensive, and just so time-consuming. We're talking processes that often took years, to determine the structure of just one single protein. And when you think about the fact that the human body alone has tens of thousands of different proteins, each with a crucial role, well, that was a huge bottleneck, almost paralyzing for understanding disease and designing therapies.
It really was a monumental bottleneck, a huge roadblock. And this is precisely where artificial intelligence, AI, has stepped in and just completely revolutionized the field. What's really fascinating here is how Google DeepMind's AlphaFold, this groundbreaking AI model developed by their team, led by Demis Hassabis and John Jumper, completely transformed this landscape. So instead of those painstaking, slow lab methods, AlphaFold uses a really sophisticated combination of deep learning algorithms and massive databases full of existing protein sequence and structure data. It essentially learns the fundamental rules of how those amino acid sequences fold up into these intricate 3D shapes. And that allows it to predict structures with, frankly, unprecedented accuracy and just astonishing speed. To give you a sense of the scale of this achievement, it's truly mind-boggling. Demis Hassabis himself highlighted this DeepMind's AI model deciphered an astonishing 200 million protein structures in just one single year.
200 million.
In a year.
Yeah.
Exactly. 200 million. Now, just let that sink in for a moment. Compare that to the decades it would have taken human scientists to map just a tiny, tiny fraction of that number using those old traditional methods. This wasn't just, a small step forward. It was a fundamental paradigm shift. a complete game changer. And this monumental feat, this incredible leap in our understanding of life's fundamental machinery, it didn't just earn Hassabis and Jumper the Nobel Prize in chemistry, which is obviously huge, but it also fundamentally transformed the entire landscape of protein research and, by extension, drug discovery. It opened up entirely new avenues.
Okay, wow. So just to make sure I'm really grasping the magnitude of this,
Right.
are we saying that we've gone from painstakingly figuring out one protein structure at a time, maybe taking years of dedicated lab work, to essentially having an AI that can scan entire libraries, libraries containing hundreds of millions of proteins, and almost instantly tell us their precise 3D shapes?
That's essentially it, yes. The speed and scale are just incredible.
That's like giving every biologist on the planet a superpowered microscope, right? But also coupled with a comprehensive instant blueprint for basically every molecule they need to study. Sounds almost too good to be true, but I guess the Nobel Prize speaks for itself. This must have just profound implications for medicine.
Absolutely profound. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, especially for human health. Once you understand a protein's exact 3D structure, like you said, you can understand its precise function, how it works, what it does, and critically, once you know that, you can start to design drugs that interact specifically with it. Imagine designing a molecule, a potential drug, that perfectly fits into a specific little pocket or site on a disease-causing protein. You could either block its harmful activity or maybe even enhance a beneficial one. That level of precision was just impossible before on this scale.
Right. Targeting becomes much more precise.
Exactly. And Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, he clearly sees drug development as the next major frontier for this kind of AI, where these AlphaFold-like capabilities will truly shine.
He predicts, I read this, that with AI's help, the time it takes to design a new drug could be slashed dramatically from what traditionally takes, what, a decade? And billions of dollars in R&D.
Easily a decade, often more. And billions, yes.
Down to potentially just months, or maybe even weeks. That's just a staggering acceleration, isn't it?
It really is staggering. It means potentially life-saving therapies could reach patients so much faster, addressing urgent medical needs with just unprecedented speed.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just about efficiency. It's about potentially saving countless lives and reducing suffering on a global scale. It's huge.
It is huge. And this capability also extends to understanding these really complex protein interactions, how different proteins work together or sometimes against each other. These interactions are absolutely crucial for understanding the underlying mechanisms of so many diseases, from cancer to Alzheimer's to Parkinson's. AlphaFold helps researchers explore these intricate molecular dances, identifying the precise binding sites where new molecules could potentially intervene.
So you can disrupt the bad interactions or maybe boost the good ones.
Precisely. It's like having a detailed choreography guide to the incredibly intricate dance happening inside our cells, allowing us to step in with incredible precision. And it's not just about the fundamental drug development, the lab work. AI is already making pretty significant inroads into other critical areas of healthcare. It's starting to impact how we diagnose, how we treat, and even how we manage patient care on a daily basis. For instance, Google DeepMind made quite a splash back in January 2020. They announced an algorithm that, quite remarkably, actually surpassed human experts in detecting breast cancer from screening mammograms.
Surpassed human experts.
That's what the study showed. It wasn't just a slight improvement. It demonstrated AI's potential to augment and maybe even in some specific cases improve our diagnostic capabilities, leading to potentially earlier detection and better outcomes. And in primary care, AI is also emerging as a pretty powerful tool. It can help support decision-making for physicians. For example, it can assist in predictive modeling, like identifying patients who might be at higher risk for certain conditions based on patterns in their electronic health records that a human might miss. And it can even help with the business side of things, the analytics within medical practices, optimizing resources, improving efficiency.
Okay, that makes sense.
And we're also seeing these real-world examples like digital consultant apps. You might have heard of Babylon. These apps use AI and speech recognition to offer immediate medical consultations. You describe your symptoms, and the app uses its huge database of medical knowledge to suggest potential diagnoses or maybe recommend next steps. It's kind of a new frontier in accessible, immediate health advice, offering convenience to potentially millions.
That leads me to something else. Have you ever wondered why AI is increasingly being used in mental health therapy? It's a fascinating and maybe slightly controversial application. Chatbots like Wobot, Earkick, Wysa, These are becoming quite prominent examples, and they've actually been studied quite rigorously for their effectiveness in helping people manage conditions like anxiety and depression. On one hand, these AI tools offer incredible accessibility, right? They're available 24/7 anywhere with an internet connection. That could be invaluable for people in remote areas, or maybe those who face barriers to traditional therapy costs, stigma, whatever it might be. They can provide immediate support, coping strategies. That's a powerful advantage. But, and this is a big but, this does raise a really compelling question for us to consider. Many researchers argue that while these chatbots can offer support, relying solely on them for mental health care might miss something crucial. They argue it might not provide the essential reciprocity, the empathy, the accountability that you find in a human-to-human therapeutic relationship.
That's a really important point, the human connection.
Exactly. Can a machine truly replicate that nuanced understanding, that deep connection, those subtle cues that are often so vital in effective therapy?
Yeah.
What do you think about that potential trade-off between the accessibility, which is great, and maybe the depth of human connection in mental health care? It seems like a profound ethical and practical consideration as these tools become more common.
It absolutely is a profound consideration. And zooming out again to the bigger picture, AI is also seen as potentially very useful for elder care, especially given, the global trend of aging populations. People are living longer, which is fantastic, but it brings challenges. So tools using AI, like environmental sensors in the home or personal wearable sensors, they can unobtrusively monitor a person's regular activities.
Yeah.
These systems can then alert caretakers, family members, professionals to any abnormalities in behavior or sudden changes in vital signs.
Like detecting a fall, or maybe if someone hasn't moved for a while.
Exactly. Or even more subtle things. Imagine an AI system noticing maybe a senior's walking pattern suddenly becoming unstable over a few days, or a significant deviation in their sleep schedule, and it automatically flags it for someone to investigate. This kind of proactive monitoring could significantly enhance safety and provide real peace of mind for families. However, and there always seems to be a however with powerful tech, the widespread use of such monitoring inevitably sparks significant discussions about privacy.
Yeah, I could see that immediately.
Right. Some of these advanced systems aren't just detecting presence, they're designed to map home layouts, recognize specific activities, maybe even infer human interactions. This naturally leads to really valid concerns about how much monitoring is too much, especially for potentially vulnerable populations who might not be able to fully consent or understand the implications of this kind of pervasive surveillance.
The fine line.
It's a very delicate balance.
Yeah.
Where do we draw that line between helpful assistance and intrusive observation? It's something we, as a society, are still very much trying to figure out. We need to harness the benefits without trampling on fundamental rights.
Yeah, it's clear AI holds immense promise, but like any powerful tool, it definitely comes with its own set of challenges, its complexities. Let's maybe unpack some of those a bit more. Despite all the excitement around AI and health research, some prominent researchers have voiced pretty significant criticisms. It's not all smooth sailing. For example, a group of really highly respected researchers, Trevor Hastie, Joel Pineau, Robert Tibshirani, they openly criticized that Google DeepMind breast cancer detection work we mentioned earlier.
Oh, interesting. What was their criticism?
They argued that the research publication, well, it lacked crucial methodological details, and importantly, the underlying code wasn't made public.
Ah, the reproducibility issue.
Exactly. They contended this effectively undermined its scientific value because it made it impossible for the broader scientific community to independently confirm the results or even build upon the work. It really speaks to a broader principle in science, right? Transparency and reproducibility are just fundamental. You have to be able to check the work. In fact, another noted researcher, Benjamin Hayes, went even further. In the MIT Technology Review, he basically characterized DeepMind's work as an advertisement.
Wow, harsh.
Pretty strong critique, yeah, suggesting its primary purpose was maybe public relations rather than robust scientific contribution. Now, whether that's fair or not, these critiques highlight the absolute importance of open science and peer validation, especially in these cutting-edge fields where human health is directly at stake. And another critical concern we absolutely have to talk about with AI in healthcare is bias. This raises a really important question. If the data sets used to train these AI models are small, or they don't accurately represent the full diversity of the human population, well, they can inadvertently contain inherent biases.
Right, garbage in, garbage out, essentially. Or bias data in, bias AI out.
Precisely. And these biases then get inherited by the AI models themselves. That compromises their generalizability, how well they work for everyone, and their stability. Even more concerning, these biased models could potentially be discriminatory. They might lead to flawed diagnoses or treatment recommendations that disproportionately harm underrepresented minority groups.
That's a huge ethical red flag.
Absolutely. For example, if a diagnostic AI is trained mostly on data from, say, white males, it might perform poorly or even misdiagnose conditions in women or people of color, just worsening existing health disparities.
That's a critical point, and it highlights exactly why regulatory oversight is so crucial in this space. Regulators are really scrambling to catch up with the sheer pace of AI innovation. The US FDA, for instance, they published a new action plan back in January 2021, specifically for AI and machine learning-based software as a medical device, SAM-MD, they call it.
Okay, so what's their plan?
Well, their approach focuses on several key things. Creating tailored regulatory frameworks, because AI isn't like a traditional drug. Promoting good machine learning practices to ensure quality and reliability. Also, fostering a patient-centered approach, including transparency about how these systems actually work. And crucially, developing methods to detect and actively mitigate algorithm bias.
That's good to hear.
And finally, continuously monitoring their real-world performance after they're approved. It's a proactive effort to try and ensure these powerful tools are safe, effective, and ethically deployed. What's kind of interesting to note in this global picture is that as of 2025, Europe was actually seen as leading the USA in terms of AI regulation.
Really? How so?
Well, while maybe lagging slightly behind in raw innovation in some areas, their more proactive stance on governance, on setting rules early, actually prompted some US-based biotech companies, particularly in California, to engage with the European Medicines Agency earlier than they might have otherwise.
Ah, so regulation can actually spur action, even across borders.
Exactly. It shows this global interplay between innovation and regulation, how one region's approach can influence others, and how companies have to navigate this evolving patchwork of rules to bring their tech to market safely. It really underlines that scientific progress has to go hand in hand with careful consideration of its societal impact.
Okay, so moving on from the really revolutionary advancements in AI, let's look at another incredibly promising and potentially even more transformative area: genetic therapies. For millions of people around the world, especially those suffering from rare genetic diseases, the reality of their condition is often one of very limited hope. These diseases, caused by defective genes, maybe one or more mutations in our fundamental genetic blueprint, they often have very, very few options for treatment.
That's tragically true for so many conditions.
Yeah, I mean, for the vast majority of rare genetic diseases, think conditions like Huntington's, cystic fibrosis, certain types of muscular dystrophy, only about 5% currently have any approved treatments at all. That leaves this huge population of patients with little more than just managing symptoms, or tragically, sometimes no effective interventions whatsoever. And this is exactly where genetic therapies step onto the stage as a potential game changer, a real paradigm shift. These are a group of truly revolutionary techniques developed with this audacious goal. Not just treating the symptoms, but actually correcting the defective genes right at the source.
Fixing the root cause.
Exactly. Imagine being able to literally edit or replace or maybe silence a faulty gene within a patient's own cells, thereby addressing the fundamental cause of the illness. This holds the profound promise of not just managing a disease, but potentially curing it completely. It's about rewriting the very code of life, offering a level of therapeutic precision we could only dream of just a few decades ago.
That distinction is so powerful, isn't it? Moving from just treatment to an actual cure. And what's really fascinating here is what the experts themselves, the researchers in the field, are saying. There was a comprehensive global survey. Over 1,400 researchers working directly in rare genetic diseases were polled, and it revealed some truly insightful predictions about the future. The overwhelming majority of these experts believe that gene therapies will become the standard of care for many rare genetic diseases before 2036.
Before 2036, that's less than 15 years away.
Exactly. Less than 15 years, that's their expectation for becoming standard practice. But perhaps even more significantly, they expect these therapies to actually be able to cure these diseases again, not just manage them sometime after 2036.
Wow, so standard of care before 36, potential cures after 36.
That's the general consensus from this large group of experts. So we're talking about a horizon where these fundamental genetic corrections become a reality for patients. And this isn't just, optimistic speculation. It's a specific timeline projected by the very scientists who are on the front lines developing these technologies in their labs right now.
That's incredibly compelling, hearing such specific predictions from the scientific community itself. And when we drill down into the specific technologies that these researchers are most optimistic about, one name consistently comes up, doesn't it?
Let me guess. CRISPR.
You got it. CRISPR-Cas9. This revolutionary gene editing tool was identified overwhelmingly as the approach most likely to succeed in actually fixing or replacing those defective genes within that 15-year time frame. It really speaks to the perceived power and potential of CRISPR's precision and maybe its relative ease of use compared to some of the earlier gene editing methods. Interestingly, though, the survey also revealed some subtle but maybe important differences based on the respondents' self-assessed knowledge levels within the field.
Oh, how so?
Well, those classified as high-knowledge respondents, presumably the ones really deep in the research trenches, they expressed a strong belief that gene therapies would achieve long-lasting, potentially permanent effects before 2036. They also tended to favor using viral vectors, basically specially engineered viruses, as the most effective method for delivering these corrected genes into cells.
Okay, so the deepest experts are optimistic about near-term permanence with viruses.
Right. But then the good knowledge respondents, while still very optimistic overall, they anticipated these long-lasting effects would likely materialize a bit later, maybe after 2036, and they showed more of a preference for non-viral vectors for gene delivery things like lipid nanoparticles.
Interesting divergence. Maybe reflects different takes on the current challenges with each delivery method.
Exactly. It shows that even within expert communities, there are healthy debates and different perspectives on the precise pace of progress and the best technical approaches. It's not monolithic. And in terms of where much of this groundbreaking research is actually focused, the survey highlighted some key areas of expertise. Rare genetic neurological disorders was the most common area. That accounted for nearly 28% of the high knowledge group and over 23% of the good knowledge group.
So brain and nerve-related genetic conditions are a major focus.
Seems so. And following that was rare inborn errors of metabolism, which often involve the body's inability to process certain substances correctly. This tells us where a significant chunk of current research effort and presumably funding is being directed, tackling some of the most devastating and complex genetic illnesses affecting the brain and our basic metabolism.
Now, while the promise of genetic therapies is undeniably immense, it truly is a beacon of hope for so many families, it's absolutely crucial to temper that excitement with a healthy dose of scientific reality.
Right, the caveats.
Exactly. Most of these therapies are still very much in the developmental stages. They're not off-the-shelf cures yet. The journey from a promising lab discovery to a widely available, safe, and effective clinical treatment is incredibly long, complex, and rigorous, proving their consistent efficacy across diverse patient populations and especially ensuring their long-term safety. That is a massive hurdle.
What are the main safety concerns?
While we're still navigating potential off-target effects, that's where the gene editing tool might accidentally make unintended changes elsewhere in the genome, which could have unforeseen consequences. And we're also grappling with potential long-term immune responses. The body might react against the delivery vector or the corrected cells over time, potentially neutralizing the therapy or causing other issues. So the uncertainty surrounding these aspects means that widespread success, while hoped for, is definitely not yet assured. Continued, meticulous, careful research is absolutely vital.
Okay, so if I'm trying to sort of summarize this section in my head, it really sounds like we're genuinely on the cusp of something potentially monumental here. We're talking about moving beyond just managing symptoms to actually fixing the fundamental genetic blueprint that causes the disease in the first place.
That's the core idea, yes.
And the scientific community, based on this survey, seems highly optimistic about this transformative potential. They really envision a future where many rare genetic diseases could be cured, maybe within our lifetimes.
Yeah.
However, it's a big mention. However, they're also being incredibly realistic about the massive hurdles that still need to be overcome.
Absolutely. Scientific rigor demands that realism.
It's about translating these really cutting-edge techniques from the controlled environment of a lab into widespread, safe, and consistently effective use in actual patients. Is that a fair summary?
That's a very fair summary. It feels like we're holding our breath for a true medical revolution, but one that absolutely demands incredible precision, patience, and a deep commitment to safety.
Exactly. The foundational science and the sheer speed of innovation are incredibly exciting, no doubt about it. But that translation into broad clinical application, especially for rare diseases which often affect smaller geographically dispersed populations, that presents unique challenges. Challenges in terms of scaling up manufacturing of these complex therapies navigating really complex and evolving regulatory pathways in different countries, and also ensuring equitable distribution. How do we make sure these potential cures reach everyone who needs them, not just, a privileged few who can afford them or live near specialized centers?
Right, the access issue is huge.
It's a really complex dance between the scientific breakthrough, the ethical considerations, and the practicalities of global health policy. Okay, let's maybe pause and simplify that part again by looking at a completely different kind of disease challenge. Let's pivot from futuristic AI and gene editing to a very real-world example of disease eradication efforts happening right now on a grand public health scale. I'm talking about neglected tropical diseases, or NPDs, specifically focusing on Nigeria. This isn't about theoretical cures for rare conditions. This is about debilitating illnesses that affect hundreds of millions of people right now.
A staggering number of people.
It really is. Nigeria alone, a country with just immense human potential, accounts for around 25%, a quarter, of Africa's entire NTD burden. We're talking about a staggering 165 million people. That's 84% of the Nigerian population, who require preventive chemotherapy for at least one NTD.
84%, just think about that.
It's almost impossible to comprehend. Imagine nearly an entire country grappling with these illnesses day in, day out. It's a truly massive public health challenge, impacting almost every single household, and a significant, often overlooked reason for this widespread prevalence. It comes down to something very basic, yet absolutely critical: the lack of consistent access to clean water and adequate sanitation.
Fundamentals.
Exactly. Many of these NTDs, like schistosomiasis or guinea worm disease, river blindness, they're directly tied to unsafe water sources or poor sanitation. It's just a stark reminder that even with all our incredible advancements in AI and genetic therapies, that fundamental infrastructure, basic public health measures, access to basic human necessities, they remain absolutely critical in the global fight against disease.
You can have the best drugs in the world, but if the water isn't clean.
Precisely. Without clean water, advanced medicine can only do so much. It highlights the interconnectedness of health and development.
Indeed. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these NTDs have absolutely disastrous consequences, particularly for the most economically disadvantaged populations. They really trap people in these vicious cycles of poverty and illness. The sources we looked at share some truly heartbreaking stories that really humanize these huge statistics. We hear about individuals suffering for 16 years or more, some even an unbelievable 40 years, from really debilitating conditions. Things like lymphedema, which causes severe painful swelling, often in the limbs, or onchocerciasis, also known as river blindness, and trachoma, which is a leading cause of preventable blindness worldwide.
40 years. It's
Yeah.
hard to fathom living with something like that for so long.
It really is. These aren't just names of diseases. They represent lives profoundly impacted, livelihoods destroyed, futures stolen. Take the tragic story mentioned of Boniface, a fisherman in Kenya. He lost 3 friends to schistosomiasis. This disease, caused by parasitic worms found in contaminated water, it's notorious for its high mortality rate in sub-Saharan Africa, often because of hidden damage like liver or kidney failure that goes undiagnosed until it's too late. It's often a silent killer. And the economic and social impact is just immense. Conditions like trachoma and onchocerciasis cause chronic eye discharge, progressively declining vision, and in many, many cases, complete and irreversible blindness. This leads to profound productivity losses. For instance, the source mentioned a 60 to 100% loss of productivity for individuals who are blinded by trachoma. They simply can't work effectively anymore. People like Rebecca, who was mentioned, become entirely dependent. She couldn't do her farm work, she couldn't socialize easily, she couldn't even navigate her own community without a guide. It shows the deep personal and community burden these diseases impose. Although what's also fascinating, and maybe a testament to human resilience, is that some individuals affected by conditions like hydrocele or lymphedema reported feeling no pain and said they could still carry out their daily activities despite having significant physical enlargements.
Really? Even with visible symptoms?
Yes. It shows the varied individual experience of these diseases. Not everyone experiences the same level of debilitation or discomfort, though for many, many people, these diseases are truly devastating and completely life-altering.
So what does this all mean for those affected on the ground? Is there hope? Is there treatment available? It's not all grim news, right?
No, definitely not all grim. There are significant efforts underway.
The sources reveal the diverse pathways to care that people are actually finding. It's not just one route. Many participants found treatment at hospitals, which is the formal medical system. Others went through traditional healers, who are often deeply integrated into community life and highly trusted. And then there are these really crucial school-based mass drug administration programs. They call them MAM program.
Yeah, yes, the deworming programs and such.
Exactly. These are initiatives where health workers go directly into schools and administer preventive medicines to children. It's a way to reach a large and vulnerable population really efficiently. And the impact of this treatment, even if it's sometimes temporary or requires repeated doses, is apparently profound.
Hmm.
People reported immediate relief, like children visibly passing out worms after treatment for soil-transmitted helminths. That must be a very tangible, visible sign of improvement for families.
Absolutely. Seeing is believing in that case.
Right. Others experienced a significantly improved quality of life. There was one trachoma patient mentioned who actually saw better exam results after having corrective surgery because their vision had dramatically improved.
Wow, that's a direct link between health intervention and educational opportunity.
Exactly. It shows the direct positive impact on daily life and future opportunities. And many patients, the sources said, expressed this deep and enduring hope that these treatments would provide a lasting solution, even if previous attempts had only offered temporary relief. It really highlights that enduring human desire for health, for freedom from suffering, and the profound psychological uplift that comes even with just the promise of a cure.
And this raises a really important question. Beyond the immediate human impact, beyond the profound relief for individuals and families, what's the economic benefit of tackling these NTDs on a grand scale? Because the argument for investing in global health becomes incredibly compelling when you start looking at the numbers of the return on investment.
Okay, so what does the analysis show?
Well, a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis was conducted specifically for Nigeria. It estimated that eliminating just 5 key NTDs, the most common ones by the year 2030, would yield a staggering total of $25 billion in benefits to the Nigerian economy.
$25 billion.
Billion with a B, yes. This isn't just, a humanitarian argument about doing the right thing, which it is. It's also a powerful economic case for investing in public health. And this impressive figure, it isn't just pulled out of thin air. It's based on a detailed calculation looking at multiple sources of economic gain. Firstly, there's the straightforward increased productivity for individuals who are cured or who avoid getting infected in the first place because of preventive measures. A healthier workforce is simply a more productive workforce. That contributes more to the national economy.
Makes sense.
Secondly, there are significant savings from avoided out-of-pocket expenses for treatment. Families no longer have to spend their limited income on medicines, doctor visits, transport to clinics, or traditional healers. For example, just for lymphatic filariasis, that's a painful and disfiguring NTD, the avoided treatment costs alone were estimated at $463.3 million. That's money freed up for food, education, housing.
That's a huge amount just for one disease's treatment costs.
It is. And thirdly, perhaps the biggest component of that $25 billion comes from the freed up productivity of caregivers. Think about it. When family members or friends no longer have to spend their days caring for someone debilitated by an NTD, they can return to their own work, to education, or other productive activity.
The hidden economic cost of caregiving.
Exactly. This caregiver productivity gain alone was estimated at an astonishing $5.8 billion for just those 5 common NTDs in Nigeria. So when you factor in the estimated cost of actually achieving this elimination, which is around $2.4 billion, it leads to a truly remarkable net gain of $22.6 billion for the Nigerian economy.
Wow, so the benefits massively outweigh the costs.
Massively. It clearly demonstrates that investing in public health isn't just an expense. It's an investment that can have huge economic dividends, not just humanitarian ones. It really underscores the idea that health is wealth for individuals and for nations. Now, the success of these really ambitious NTD elimination programs, based on international experiences and expert opinions, it really hinges on several critical factors working together.
It's not just about having the drugs, then.
No, definitely not. You need meticulous, effective mapping of the transmission areas. You have to know exactly where the disease is prevalent to target interventions precisely. Crucially, there needs to be continuous treatment according to World Health Organization guidelines, and that, in practice, critically requires uninterrupted, sustained funding. Programs falter if the resources dry up.
Consistency is key.
Absolutely. Additionally, you need robust engagement and cooperation among all the various stakeholders. That means local communities, traditional leaders, national governments, NGOs, international organizations. Everyone needs to be working together. And of course, ongoing educational activities are essential to ensure public awareness, encourage participation in treatment programs, and maintain compliance with prevention measures like using bed nets or improving sanitation.
So it's a complex, multifaceted effort.
It really is. It relies on deep collaboration and sustained commitment from absolutely all levels.
Okay, so now let's shift gears one last time. Let's transition from the very tangible, immediate challenges of NTDs to perhaps the ultimate, most audacious deep dive imaginable. What if?
What if medical science truly cured all diseases?
The big one.
The big one. It sounds almost preposterous, doesn't it? Like something plucked straight from a utopian fantasy novel. Given the sheer complexity and the myriad forms of human illness, it feels, well, almost impossible. Maybe more suited to philosophy than practical science. But just imagine for a second the initial immediate positives. Just picture children born with debilitating conditions like cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy. Instead of being confined to wheelchairs or facing a lifetime of physical limitations, imagine that could just choose a different life. One free from those physical burdens from the start.
A completely different trajectory. Completely different. Or consider AIDS patients whose lives right now are often a relentless cycle of hospital visits, expensive drugs, managing chronic symptoms. Imagine them suddenly being offered an immediate sweeping fix, something that simply eradicates the virus from their bodies. Gone.
Yeah.
And even the common nagging annoyances that disrupt our daily lives. You know, the colds, the flu, seasonal allergies, maybe they just disappear. Poof.
No more sick days.
Fewer sick days from work or school, yeah. More uninterrupted time with family, a collective gain in human potential, and maybe just happiness that's almost impossible to quantify. What do you think that would feel like for society, just the absence of those constant background illnesses?
Oh, it's an incredibly seductive vision, isn't it? The freedom from that burden. However, taking a broader, maybe more scientific or even philosophical view, many experts are actually highly skeptical that we could ever truly achieve a world without any disease whatsoever.
Really? Even with AI and gene editing and everything?
Well, think about it. The human body is an incredibly complex biological system, and evolution is this relentless, ongoing force. Even if we miraculously eliminated every single known disease today, and perhaps even managed to extend the average human lifespan significantly, say, to 200 years, it's highly probable that new, previously unseen ailments, maybe specific to that advanced age range, might emerge.
Diseases of extreme old age that we just haven't encountered before.
Exactly. Diseases we've never encountered simply because humans haven't routinely lived that long before. Or maybe new forms of cellular breakdown, new vulnerabilities that only manifest at extreme longevity. It seems likely it would be an ongoing challenge, a continuous coevolution between us and our internal and external environments. And then there are the profound population dynamics to consider, especially on a global scale. In developing nations, for instance, eradicating widespread infectious diseases like malaria or HIV, which currently claim millions of lives, especially among the young, that would mean a dramatic surge in surviving babies and children.
Which is obviously a good thing in itself.
A monumental humanitarian triumph, absolutely. But it could, at least initially, exacerbate existing issues like food crises, water scarcity, pressure on limited educational or healthcare resources.
Right, the immediate resource strain.
Exactly. However, you could also argue, perhaps more optimistically, that a healthier, larger, and ultimately more productive population, free from the constant drain of these major diseases, might actually be better equipped in the long run to develop its own innovative solutions to these very challenges, transforming their societies from within. It's a complex interplay of initial stress and maybe long-term potential. Now, what's truly fascinating here, and perhaps a little unsettling to think about, are the potential long-term evolutionary effects.
How would it change us as a species?
Precisely. For eons, for millions of years, disease has acted as a really powerful survival of the fittest mechanism. It's harsh, but true. It's essentially been weeding out individuals with weaker immune systems or genetic susceptibilities. It's been this constant arms race against pathogens, forcing our immune systems and our genetic makeup to constantly adapt and strengthen just to survive.
Okay, so what happens if you remove that pressure?
Well, without that constant pressure, those selective forces would diminish significantly. And this raises a really important question. Could standards for human survival actually grow lax over many generations? Disease-related alleles, those specific genetic variations linked to illness or susceptibility, they might become far more common in the human gene pool simply because the selective pressure to remove them is no longer there.
So we might become genetically weaker in some ways.
Yeah. It's a possibility that evolutionary biologists consider. It forces us to ponder what it truly means to be fit or healthy in a world without disease as a major evolutionary driver. How might our species fundamentally change over millennia? It's a deep question. And this also brings us back to another very practical yet critical challenge. Even if we had universal cures scientifically proven for every single disease, would everyone actually take them?
The human factor.
The human factor, exactly. It's not just about the scientific breakthrough, it's deeply entwined with human behavior, societal beliefs, trust, and practical infrastructure. People might be completely unaware they're sick, especially in the early stages of a disease before symptoms appear, or they might actively refuse treatment due to deeply held personal or religious beliefs, or maybe a pervasive mistrust in the medical system or government.
Yeah, we see that already with existing treatments.
We do. And there's always the persistent possibility of wrong diagnoses, meaning the cure isn't offered. Or individuals might reject potentially life-saving treatments because the cost is prohibitive, even if the cure exists. Or maybe because the side effects, even if temporary, are perceived as intolerable. So, simply having a cure doesn't automatically guarantee its universal adoption or its effectiveness at a population level. That's a significant hurdle that extends far beyond the laboratory bench.
It's certainly a lot to ponder, isn't it? So many layers beyond just the science. And it brings us kind of full circle back to Demis Hassabis, the CEO of DeepMind, and his incredibly ambitious vision for the future of medicine that we started with. He envisions this future where doctors don't just look at your symptoms and maybe run some tests. Instead, they show you these intricate network diagrams of your individual genetic mutations, your specific biology.
Personalized down to the network level.
Exactly. And they can explain precisely how to intervene to correct those specific issues. He even suggests that in just 10 or 20 years, maybe traditional specialists like cardiologists and neurologists might be replaced by what he calls networkologists.
Networkology.
Yeah, people who focus on the interconnected biological networks that govern our health rather than just one organ system. It's a vision that implies an almost complete understanding and maybe even control over our biological destiny. If we truly succeed on this path, harnessing AI to decipher life's fundamental blueprints, editing genes with unprecedented precision, and strategically eliminating these widespread, long-standing diseases. Hassabis seems to believe we might genuinely cure most diseases. It's an incredible thought. This entire deep dive, it feels like it's taken us from the microscopic world of proteins and the groundbreaking impact of AI, through the really challenging but solvable global health crisis of neglected tropical diseases, and then ventured into this deeply speculative, almost philosophical future of a world entirely free from illness. It's just a journey filled with incredible scientific ingenuity, profound human impact, and really complex ethical, social, and even evolutionary considerations.
It really is a testament to human ambition and innovation, but also a reminder of the complexities involved. Hashtag tag outro.
So after all that, what does this all mean for us? As we try to understand this rapidly changing world of medicine, let's try to sum up. We've definitely seen how AI, particularly these breakthrough models like AlphaFold, is just radically accelerating drug discovery. Cracking that protein folding code is potentially shrinking drug development time from years down to maybe mere weeks. That fundamentally changes the speed at which new therapies could reach us. That's huge. We've also explored the powerful but definitely double-edged sword of AI in broader healthcare. It offers revolutionary diagnostic tools, maybe more accessible chatbot therapies, but it also raises those critical questions about data bias, patient privacy, and the absolute need for ethical oversight and strong regulatory frameworks. We need to ensure these powerful tools serve everyone fairly.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we saw how genetic therapies, led by these powerful and precise tools like CRISPR-Cas9, they really are poised to potentially revolutionize the treatment and maybe even offer the cure for many rare genetic diseases, possibly within the next 15 years or so. That could fundamentally rewrite the human experience for millions of people. Although, as we discussed, the challenges of proving consistent safety and widespread efficacy, those remain absolutely paramount. Mustn't forget that.
Crucial caveats.
Exactly. And perhaps most importantly, in terms of current impact, we learned how targeted interventions against those neglected tropical diseases, looking at Nigeria as an example, offer not just profound human relief and a dramatically improved quality of life for millions, but they also yield massive quantifiable economic gains. It proves pretty conclusively, I think, that investing in global health isn't just charity. It truly pays significant dividends for entire nations and their collective futures.
Yeah, maybe think of it this way. Our journey through medical advancements, it seems to be undeniably moving from just treating symptoms, which is what medicine did for centuries, to fundamentally reprogramming the very blueprint of life itself. It's a whole different level.
Whether it's decoding complex proteins with AI, or precisely editing genes with these cutting-edge tools, or strategically eliminating widespread diseases that have plagued humanity for millennia, the ambition is clear. To move towards a world where good health is not just a privilege enjoyed by some, but a fundamental given for all. But maybe the ultimate question isn't just if we can eventually cure all diseases. Maybe the more pressing question for us now is how. How do we ensure these revolutionary advancements benefit all of humanity, fairly and equitably? How do we do it without inadvertently creating new disparities, new divides between the haves and the have-nots, or unleashing unforeseen challenges? What does a truly healthy, genuinely disease-free future look like for everyone? That's a question I think for all of us to consider as we watch these incredible scientific breakthroughs continue to unfold. Thank you for joining again on The Deep Dive.